Hi everyone, we're back to talk about the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict, and I have some information for you today. So let's get on with it. This is called Jewish Palestine at the time of Jesus Christ. And it was a political situation. Palestine in Jesus' day was part of the Roman Empire, which controlled its various territories in a number of ways. In the east, Eastern Asia Minor, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, the territories were governed either by kings who were, quote, friends of allies, unquote, of Rome, often called client kings, or more disparagingly, puppet kings, by the governors supported by a Roman army. When Jesus was born, all of the Jewish Palestine, as well as some of the neighboring Gentile areas, was ruled by Rome's able, quotes, friend and ally, Herod the Great. For Rome, Palestine was important, not in itself, but because it lay between Syria and Egypt, two of Rome's most valuable possessions. Rome had legions in both countries, but they didn't have any in Palestine. Roman imperial policy required that Palestine be loyal and peaceful so that it did not undermine Rome's larger interest. That end was achieved for a long time by permitting Herod to remain king of Judea in 37 to 4 BC and allowing him a free hand in governing his kingdom, as long as the requirements of stability and loyalty were met. So as long as he kept his requirements of stability and loyalty, he was able to rule no matter however he saw fit. When Herod died shortly after Jesus' birth, his kingdom was divided into 5 separate parts. Most of the Gentile areas was separated from Jewish areas, which was split between 2 of Herod's sons. Herod Archelaus, who received Judea and Idumea, as well as Samaria, and was not Jewish. And Herod Antipas, who received Galilee and Perea. In the New Testament, Antipas was somewhat confusingly called Herod, as in Luke 23 verses 6 to 12. Apparently, the sons of Herod took his name, just as the successors of Julius Caesar were commonly called Caesar. So this is one reason why we find it very, very difficult to trace someone's history back that maybe intentionally is being covered by all these name repeats and changes of names of states. Both sons were given lesser titles than the king. Archelaus was ethnarch and Antipas was tetrarch. The non-Jewish areas, except Samaria, were assigned to a third son, Philip, to Herod's sister Salome. Let's take a look at the map. Below the blue line is where Herod Archelaus is governing. Next to the asterisk is Judea, Idumea, and Nabatea. And above the blue line is where Herod Antipas is governing, and it's Galilee, Perea, and Samaria. Antipas was given the title Tetrarch, which is one of 4 joint rulers. It's made up of the sons of Herod the Great, the four sons. And ethnarch is a Greek word meaning ethnos, tribe or nation. It's a political leadership over an ethnic group or a homogeneous kingdom, or to the province of Syria. The Emperor Augustus deposed the unsatisfactory Archelaus in AD 6, however, and transformed Judea, Idumea, and Samaria from a client kingdom to an imperial province. Well, this is interesting now. The Emperor Augustus deposed Archelaus in AD 6, and this area is now changed into an imperial province, meaning belonging to an emperor or an empire, or even relating to the United Kingdom. So they went from this area that was being ruled by puppet kings. They were placed there by Rome, and now they were transformed into a imperial province. Accordingly, he sent a prefect to govern this province. That minor Roman aristocrat, later called procurator, was supported by a small Roman army of approximately 3,000 men. The soldiers, however, came not from Italy, but from nearby Gentile cities, especially Caesarea and Sebaste. Presumably, the officers were from Italy, and during Jesus' public career, the Roman prefect was Pontius Pilate, ruled between AD 26 to 36. Although nominally in charge of Judea, Samaria, and Idumea, the prefect did not govern his area directly. Instead, he relied on local leaders. The prefect and his small army lived in the predominantly Gentile city Caesarea on the Mediterranean coast, about 2 days' march from Jerusalem. They came to Jerusalem only to ensure peace during the pilgrimage festivals, which were Passover, weeks, Shavuot, and Booths, Sukkot, when large crowds and patriotic themes sometimes combined to spark unrest or uprisings. On a day-to-day basis, Jerusalem was governed by the high priest. Assisted by a council, he had the difficult task of mediating between the remote Roman prefect and the local populace, which was hostile towards the pagans and wanted to be free of foreign interference. His political responsibility was to maintain order and to see that tribute was paid. Caiaphas, the high priest during Jesus' adulthood, held the office from about AD 18 to 36, longer than anyone else during the Roman period, indicating that he was a successful and reliable diplomat. Since he and Pilate were in power together for 10 years, they must have collaborated quite successfully. Thus, at the time of Jesus' public career, Galilee was governed by the Tetrarch, Antipas, who was sovereign within his own domain, provided that he remained loyal to Rome and maintained peace and stability within his borders, as we spoke just a few minutes ago. Judea, including Jerusalem, was nominally governed by Pilate, but the actual daily rule of Jerusalem was in the hands of Caiaphas and his council. Relations between Jewish areas and nearby Gentile areas. Galilee and Judea, the principal Jewish areas of Palestine, were surrounded by Gentile territories. For example, Caesarea, Dora, Ptolemais on the Mediterranean coast, Caesarea, Philippi, north of Galilee, and Hippus and Gadara, east of Galilee. There also were two inland Gentile cities on the west side of the Jordan River, near Galilee, Scythopolis and Sebaste. The proximity of Gentile and Jewish areas meant that there was some interchange between them, including trade, which explains why Antipas had tax collectors, but more accurately rendered as custom officers, in the villages on his side of the Sea of Galilee. There also was some exchange of populations. Some Jews lived in Gentile cities, such as Scythopolis, and some Gentiles lived in at least one of the Jewish cities, Tiberias. Jewish merchants and traders could probably speak some Greek, but primarily language of Palestinian Jews was Aramaic, a Semitic language closely related to Hebrew. On the other hand, the Jews resisted paganism and excluded temples for the worship of gods of Greece and Rome from their cities, along with the Greek educational institutions, the ephebia and gymnasium, gladiatorial contests, and other buildings or institutions, typically of Gentile areas. Because Jewish-Gentile relations in the land that the Jews considered their own were often uneasy, Jewish areas were usually governed separately from Gentile areas. The reign of Herod the Great was the exception to the rule, but even he treated the Jewish and the Gentile parts of his kingdom differently, fostering Greco-Roman culture in the Gentile sectors, but introducing only very minor aspects of it in the Jewish areas. So, see, as he ruled, he appeased the Jewish group by not making them subject to the Greco-Roman Hellenization of the pagan gods. There was some kind of favoritism there in order for that to happen. In the first century, Rome showed no interest in making the Jews in Palestine and other parts of the empire conform to common Greco-Roman culture. A series of decrees by Julius Caesar, Augustus, the Roman Senate, and various city councils permitted Jews to keep their own customs, even when they were antithetical to Greco-Roman culture. For example, in respect for Jewish observance of the Sabbath, Rome exempted the Jews from conscription in Rome's armies. Neither did Rome colonize Jewish Palestine. Augustus established colonies elsewhere, in southern France, in Spain, in North Africa, and Asia Minor. But prior to the First Jewish Revolt, AD 66 to 74, Rome established no colonies in Jewish Palestine. Few individual Gentiles from abroad would have been attracted to live in Jewish cities, where they would have been cut off from their customary worship and cultural activities. The Gentiles who lived in Tiberias and other Jewish cities were probably natives of nearby Gentile cities, and many were Syrians who could probably speak both Aramaic and Greek. Let's take a look at the economic conditions. Most people in the ancient world produced food, clothing, or both, and could afford few and very little luxuries. Most Palestinian Jewish farmers and herdsmen, however, earned enough to support their families, pay their taxes, offer sacrifices during one or more of the annual festivals, and let their land lie fallow in the sabbatical years, when cultivation was prohibited. That's when the Lord said that in the seventh year you must not produce anything and let the land rest. Galilee in particular was relatively prosperous since the land and climate permitted abundant harvests and supported many sheep. Although it is doubtful that Galilee was as affluent in the first century as it was during the late Roman and Byzantine periods, archaeological remains from the 3rd and 4th and 5th centuries nevertheless confirm the plausibility of 1st century references to the region's prosperity. There were, of course, landless people, but the Herodian dynasty was careful to organize large public works projects that employed thousands of men. Desperate poverty was present too, but never reached a socially dangerous level. At the other end of the economic spectrum, few, if any, Palestinian Jews had the vast fortunes that successful merchants in port cities could accumulate. However, there were Jewish aristocrats with large estates and grand houses, and the merchants who served the temple, supplying, for example, incense and fabric. They could become very, very prosperous. The gap between the rich and the poor in Palestine was so obvious and distressing to the poor, but compared with that of the rest of the world, it was not especially wide. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with more.